Today we're diving into a growing challenge facing Amazon Marketplace sellers, and this is about fraudulent returns. So I'll tell you a little story. I bought a pair of pants on AliExpress, which is one of these, one of the original Chinese low-cost apps, and the box arrived. There was nothing in it. There was just like a business card from the seller. So I open a case with AliExpress and I explain and I show images. This box was empty. I never received the item that I paid for. And after all this back and forth with AliExpress, they denied my claim. So I was out of pocket for this order that I made where I never got the item. And it made me think of just how different the experience is with Amazon. If I buy something on Amazon and I decide to return it for whatever reason, my refund gets processed the minute I take it to the post office. So one of the things that has made Amazon so successful is this customer first approach. And Amazon's mission statement of being Earth's most customer-centric company isn't just talk. It shows up in everything that they do, especially on these return policies. But there's a flip side to this that's causing real problems for sellers. Let's jump in. Good morning and welcome to the Retail Media Breakfast Club. I'm your host, Kiri Masters, and every weekday at 6 a.m. Eastern, I bring you candid and real discussions in the world of retail media and marketplaces in just 10 minutes. So bring your own cup of coffee and we'll get smarter about retail media together. So I'll paint you a picture of what's happening. And I first got clued into this from discussions in Amazon seller subreddits on Reddit. I love Reddit and I love hanging out there. And this is how I learn about a lot of the pain points and issues, but also good trends that are happening on Amazon for sellers and vendors. But I saw this discussion calling out how return fraud seemed to be increasing. And so I reached out to a number of sellers and got some anecdotal feedback. A couple of sellers agreed to go on the record and speak to me for an article for Forbes, which I'll link to in the show notes here, where I get into a lot more detail on this topic. And also they agreed to share all of their records with Amazon as well, because I also reached out to Amazon comms and they wanted to do an investigation into these issues. So as an aside, I think this is one of the best ways to get sunlight on these issues is get it out into the open and into the mainstream media. And then sometimes Amazon takes things a little bit more seriously than they otherwise would if you're just raising claims in Seller Central. Anyway, back to this story here. So here's what's happening with fraudulent returns. First, you've got customers returning damaged or used items and claiming that they arrived that way. And then there's the even more bizarre, brazen approach, which is returning completely different items altogether. One of the sellers I spoke with was Michael Russell from Trucking Depot, and they sell cargo control products on Amazon. And the numbers that he shared are pretty striking. They're projecting 110 fraudulent returns this year, up from 45 last year. And this is when I spoke with him back in 2024. That's more than double the number of fraudulent returns just in 1 year. And the kicker here is that their sales volume didn't really change from year to year. So it wasn't just a question of more sales volume leading to more returns. It's about what looks like a fundamental shift in customer behavior and people really taking advantage of the system. And when I was digging into this, I learned about a case, and there were a couple of related examples of this, where a customer trying to avoid shipping costs on a heavy item sent back a box of old books and magazines that they'd actually matched the original package weight to make it seem legitimate. Like they'd found the equivalent weight in books and magazines just to make sure that they could get their refund issued, which is pretty creative, but devastating for that seller who was not able to, this was pretty significantly taking income from them on a heavy item. Now, this is where things get interesting because how badly sellers are affected by this really depends on how they fulfill their orders on Amazon. So fulfillment by Amazon versus merchant fulfilled. In the case of FBA, Amazon handles all of your shippings and returns, which also means when a customer returns an item, it goes straight back to Amazon's warehouse. And unless you're willing to pay extra fees to have returns sent back to you instead, you might never even see what actually came back to Amazon. And that makes it very difficult to catch and document the return fraud. On the flip side, if you're handling your own fulfillment through FBM, you've got a little bit more control. Returns come directly back to you. You can inspect them, you can document fraud and submit it to Amazon. But that also comes with its own challenges. You're still paying for that shipping yourself, and you're spending valuable time managing returns and dealing with customer service and trying to get Amazon to take these claims seriously. So both approaches have their trade-offs here. And I know a lot of people that listen to the show are 1P vendors as well. And this is where it's a completely invisible problem. You're not able to get these returns shipped back to you at all. And I think the thing to understand here is that this same activity is happening to vendors, but you just will never see it. And so ultimately, allowances for fraudulent returns are being accounted for in your vendor agreements. So one of the frustrations that sellers have here is that there's no real way to prevent repeat offenders from buying from you again. And some of these sellers shared with me cases where it's one customer who is repeatedly ordering products and sending back used or damaged items again and again and again. And so some of them compared this to eBay, where sellers can block problem buyers and make sure they don't buy from you again. But Amazon doesn't offer that kind of protection. I mentioned that I reached out to Amazon to get a statement from them on what their policy is and how they're dealing with this. And Amazon says they have a zero tolerance policy for return fraud and pointed to spending billions of dollars in seller protection, and that there are teams that are working on this. There is a process for sellers to file claims, and that they're sort of doing everything that they can to prevent this. But the general sentiment that I started hearing from sellers as I reached out to people and became aware of these discussions on forums is there is certainly a perception, and in some cases tracked by numbers of returns, that this is a problem that's increasing on the platform. So closing thoughts here, this whole situation really highlights a fundamental challenge in marketplace economics. Policies that keep customers happy don't always work out well for sellers. And as Amazon faced more competition from ultra low-cost Chinese marketplaces, there's already pressure on sellers and suppliers to offer a really good price. And so that comes at a cost for these suppliers. And Amazon's going to need to find some creative solutions to protect these sellers while also keeping that customer-first approach that has made them successful in the first place. And the big question is, can they find that balance? Because if they can't, they risk losing the very sellers who've helped build their marketplace into what it is today. Well, that is it for today. I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Retail Media Breakfast Club. We meet here every day at 6 a.m. Eastern. So be sure to subscribe and get your daily dose of insights, trends, and hot takes in the world of retail media and marketplaces.